You're here because you love learning from your favorite people in your own time in a way that suits you, right? Right. Well, at the SBS Academy, we understand all of that. That's why we've pulled together tutors like Eric Helms and Dr. Mike Zordos. We've created relevant evidence-based course content to help you become a better coach, practitioner, or just a way more knowledgeable trainee. And we've packaged it all together into a course that you can study in your own time from pretty much anywhere. Enrollment to the SBS Academy closes in just under a week's time, and this is the last enrollment that we'll do this year. So please don't miss out. Head over to shreddedbyscience.com/academy and sign up today.
Hi 3DMJers, this is Andrea Valdez, and today I'm talking to Brad Loomis and Alberto Nunez about whether or not the sport of bodybuilding is dead. Now, before I give you a quick intro, I want to apologize in advance for sounding like I'm in a cave during this episode. I had just moved into a new apartment a couple days before we recorded this one, and I had no idea about acoustics and how hard the sound bounces off of empty walls and hard floors without rugs. So there's a bit of an echo on my end here. Please bear with me on that. I promise you can still understand me. It's just a bit different, and things will definitely sound better next time. So anyways, back to the topic. Like I said, we're talking about the death of bodybuilding as a sport. This is just me and the guys discussing why natural bodybuilding has changed, who's responsible for that change, how we can help bring it back to the way it felt a few years ago, and a whole bunch of other opinions and insights about whether this conversation is even important or not, or whether we're off base, or just kind of telling you how we feel about the whole thing, really. So, might be a little bit controversial again because it's opinions, but as individuals who've based our careers on this industry, it's definitely a discussion worth having, and we'd love to hear from you guys as well. So if you have any feedback or comments on this particular episode, head over to 3dmusclejourney.com and leave it under podcast number 63. Here's our conversation about, is bodybuilding a dying sport, with Brad Loomis and Alberto Nunez. So Brad, this was your topic. Why, or the way you introduced the topic actually wasn't a statement, it was a question. Is bodybuilding dying? Why does that question come to mind for you?
Yeah, a lot of things kind of go around in my little pea brain, but I think what prompted the question in my mind, it was like, you know what, we just had a show in LA, Los Angeles, huge city, place that now has 2 NFL teams, and we cannot get enough bodybuilders scraped together to give away a pro card, and it seems like the shows just seem to be dwindling. The competitors seem to be getting less and less and less and less. And I mean, here it was only, Berto, like 7-8 years ago, if that, we would always have 4 classes of bodybuilders: lightweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight. We would always have 4 or 5 competitors per class, and we would have a very stacked overall, going for the pro card, and it seemed like it kind of peaked about 2011, where the pros were really 2 well-attended weight classes, 11 heavyweights, 11 lightweights, and now look at it. It just seems like they can't even fill out a whole show,
And I guess the big context for the rest of this conversation is that we are talking about natural bodybuilding, right?
I think so, yeah, because to be honest with you, I don't follow the IFBB as much, and so I don't know how.
Well, I would just think that like Los Angeles NPC shows definitely have enough to give up pro cards. It's just that the LA Natty show didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Is that accurate or not, Bert?
Well, it's kind of leaking on that side as well. I keep up with it enough to know. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that competitors have many choices in regards to what division they want to be, what criteria they want to be judged under.
Right.
So that's definitely, for them, someone who could do bodybuilding now has the option of men's physique. I think it's called classic physique.
And classic physique. There's 2 different.
And then you have the good old bodybuilding. So I think because of that, they kind of have competitors that, they would be bodybuilders typically. They would have been a few years back. Now they're competing in those divisions. So their numbers are down. So, for example, the last big show here in Colorado, this is where Phil Heath lives. So it's very like pro bodybuilding. I think there was a total of 7 bodybuilders, novice and open, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is not typical by any means.
Right. And then, oh, sorry, you cut out for a second there. Repeat what you just said.
Oh, that's not very typical by any means. Yeah.
Okay. And then too, Brad. So if we, so what you're saying, Berto, is it could be a class dilution, like they have so many options per person, but also in increasing options, there's more shows in general, right? When y'all said it peaked, there were probably half as many natty shows to even pick from, right? So do y'all think?
Yeah.
I mean, that could be another factor, Brad.
That can definitely be another factor. I believe that on the natural side of things, it's also, I think now that powerlifting is really taken off, it gives people who, they've been around in the gym long enough where they're like, I'm kind of bored of this. I'm really doing this for myself now at this point, but I need a new challenge. I think that's one, that really attracts people as opposed to, hey, let me really, emaciate myself for months on end and, get on stage. I think it's just much more appealing. It's a much more practical route than committing to any physique sport. Much, of course, bodybuilding it's got an extra level of commitment that goes with that one.
Yeah.
So
what's funny is Lawrence To Go was here in town a couple weeks ago. And we were talking about that, actually, about how he just did a mini cut, I guess last month or something, and he was saying how he was thinking about competing in the next couple of years, but he's like, I don't even know when I will again. He's like, honestly, nobody even bodybuilds anymore. And I thought that was so interesting because he was just on your roster. Like, I met him when I was competing 2013 at the San Jose Fit Expo. And you were powerlifting at that meet. And within 3 years, he was on your roster for like a year and a half, right? Did a long intro phase, then did his prep, great reverse, just went into powerlifting, and then he decided, maybe it's not for me. And he was talking about how Nsima doesn't know if or when he'll ever again. I know, Brad, you mentioned before that you don't know if you ever will again. And we'll talk about it in a second. But what it made me think of, too, I was like, is that actually how it is, or is that how he perceives it because all of his friends were competing at the same time, and so now they're all in this extended off-season together? And because it is so invasive and such a commitment that they need the multi-year break, and so they all just kind of collectively are like, nah, it's not for me. When it might be for them down the road, it's just right now they're maybe burnt out from it or something. Or is that actually how it is? I don't know. Is nobody really bodybuilding anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a great question that we have to ask. I mean, don't you? I mean, that's the perspective of a competitive bodybuilder, competitive amateur bodybuilder, which is really what fuels the sport, really.
Right.
Is amateur bodybuilding, right? And, he's not alone,
Yeah.
And so whether it's just in his own little circle, and that's just kind of his little world, and so that's all he sees. I think there's several of those, that are happening, kind of across the country, because I think that's pretty common.
Well, and what I told him too, I kind of was on that too. I go, are y'all really done, or you think you're just kind of burnt out right now? And also, when he says nobody's bodybuilding, but actually everyone's still lifting. Like, everyone is. If you are eating and lifting weights and getting better over time, you're doing exactly what a bodybuilder should be doing. So are you really not doing it right now, or you just don't want to compete right now, or you just don't want to diet right now? Like, I think there's a difference. And it's the same as how I get messages and messages like on the weekly of someone being like, "Why aren't you bodybuilding anymore? Why'd you stop bodybuilding?" I'm like, I'm pretty sure that I feel like I still am, even though
Mm-hmm.
I literally have no intentions of competing in definitely not 3 years and maybe many more, but I don't feel like I'm not bodybuilding. I don't know. That's just me, but I don't see it that way until I'm maybe like 70. Is it actually like not ever an option anymore? But I feel like if I'm always training and I'm always eating and year after year I'm acquiring more muscle mass, I am still bodybuilding. So I don't feel like it's an either or.
Mm-hmm.
That's just
Yeah,
how
and that's
I
a good
see it.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point because I've always kind of thought the same thing. I mean, bodybuilding, there's the lifestyle, and then there's bodybuilding that's the competition. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I kind of feel like I still am a bodybuilder, but I'm not going to be competing in the sport anytime soon. Whereas Bert is going to be competing in the sport in like 2 weeks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, I think that's kind of an important distinction that you bring up yeah, I think you're right. Is the sport of bodybuilding dying? Maybe necessarily bodybuilding itself, but is the sport of bodybuilding dying?
Yeah. Um, I keep thinking of it for myself and Larry, right? No, I say Larry. Lawrence is like, I don't think like when I say and you say I'm still training in bodybuilding, I'm still working on it, but I don't think about it ever because
Mm-hmm.
I have these other. It comes as a side effect of other things, right? And for you, it comes as a side effect of your powerlifting, and coach lets you do some curls here and there, right? So it's.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the sport like it's one of those questions is the small numbers at competitions a reflection of the sport dieting, or is it promoters thinking they can fill these shows when they actually can't?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would be the marker of the sport dying that nobody enters? But if an area that only had one show now has 5 shows, it just appears that nobody enters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's multifaceted, just like Bert talked about. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that there's a lot of shows out there that have more bikini competitors than figure. And I know for a long time now, there's been a lot of shows where there's been more figure competitors than female bodybuilders.
Some don't even
Um,
have bodybuilding now.
so
Yeah.
exactly. And it's almost like we said, there's more shows, there's more classes. Um, yeah. To me, if I was to make a statement, you know, I would feel pretty firm in my opinion that yes, bodybuilding is a dying sport, and not physique sports,
Okay.
but bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is a dying sport, and like we said, it's multifaceted. And I don't feel, at least like I'm alone in that point.
I don't think you are.
Um,
Yeah.
let's face it too. I mean, look at the competitiveness of natural bodybuilding right now, and that's a big reason why I, am choosing to step away from the sport. Is it is extremely competitive. So now you've got another, you know, um, facet of why I feel like it's dying. You know what I mean? Why should I even compete? I mean, yes, I know it's we always talk about competing against ourselves, and we always talk about making it a healthy sport. But at the same time, I feel like I can divert my efforts in a much better way, to where I can actually feel like a competitive athlete and not somebody that's just, we used to call the guys that used to race the track, we used to call them lappers, when they would just be out there just turning laps and there was no chance that they were even going to finish in the top five. I
But
don't want to be a lapper. I don't want to
that's
be up there on the
because you
stage
got a
going,
pro
okay,
card. No, but that's because
yeah.
you chased your pro card. Like you could do just
Yeah.
fine and maybe even win amateur shows, no problem. It's
Mm-hmm.
that once you've now that you have a pro card and you're competing against other pros, there's a genetic component. You can't out diet someone like Jeff or Burt. Like you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah,
that's
and
different.
but it's just different on a different level, because I know there's a lot of natural bodybuilders out there that are not pros that would like to or have tried, competing as an amateur, and they just find out, what, I can't do it. I can't compete.
I
It's so hard.
No, I disagree that anyone with and this is my opinion, right? I think that anyone who puts in enough years, maybe a decade or more, into training and eating well and dieting well has an opportunity to place top half at an amateur level. I literally can think of maybe 2 or 3 people with some type of, the opposite of Jeff's genetics, right? I can only think of a couple people, but I'm literally, I would say 99% of anyone who devotes a decade or more to this should be able to place top half at an amateur open. I don't know.
No, that's fine. I mean, and I think it's fine to disagree, because
you don't think that.
I can think of a lot of people that have been lifting for a long time. And I mean that, they don't have really any interest in competing, keeping in mind. So maybe they could do well, but I would just be like, nah, bro, don't even try.
No, right. And I'm saying though, but I am talking about physically capable, right? I'm not talking about people that don't adhere or that program in an unintelligent manner. I'm saying like if 99% of people, if they hire 3DMJ and worked with us for 5 or more years, that again, maybe even 10 years, to make sure I'm real safe in my thing, in my claim here, say 10 years under any one of us actually adhering and doing what they're supposed to, I don't think that they would be bottom of the barrel still after 10 years in an amateur show. 3 seasons in. I disagree. But a pro, it's different. But, we've been to how many amateur shows where someone might not have the elite genetics, but we condition them there. I don't know, in my opinion. Yeah.
You're the tiebreaker.
See, I don't think bodybuilding, because, I don't get offended when a men's physique athlete or a bikini athlete, first of all, that they're called athletes, like that doesn't offend me, to be honest, because there's some acts within the process that I think are very athletic. But when they call themselves bodybuilders, because it is, I think, firstly a way of life. It's just, it's weird to eat meals without protein, our favorite part of our day is going in there and like lifting weights in some capacity, or even a powerlifter. I think a powerlifter in some ways, a bodybuilder, it's a different branch, but they're building their body to do this very specific task. And I think especially now with like the big fat bearded powerlifter with the West Side barbell squat, like that's going. Man, there's like powerlifters, especially in the USAPL, that I think I'm like, I look at what they do nutritionally. I'm like, dude, like you got to ease up. Like, hey, here's a tier system. Like, let's try this every once in a while. Like they hit their macros to a T every day. So I think bodybuilding is like a way of life, a culture. I think is always going to be there. I think people always look at Arnold and look at those days and think like, hey, that's awesome. That's kind of where we came from. Those were our ancestors, so to speak. But it's that specific branch competitively that's just not very appealing to a lot of people. And I think first with these other divisions, I'm not exactly mad at them, because I think especially on the female side, I can think of a lot of good case studies. I'm like, man, your physiology just wouldn't handle that division. Like it would be devastating to a lot of things outside of, besides the fact that it's hard. I think it'd be just a hell of a ride hormonally, and many other things would occur that maybe you weren't ready for. I think it makes it more inclusive for sure. Like that's the one thing I've noticed more, and I love that part. However, I just think that there's too many young men. I'm with you, Andrea. That especially in the natural side of things, that they basically give up on themselves a bit too early. They kind of want to do bodybuilding, but they don't go after it. And I know because I've been on that side, and perhaps I was way too cautious. I think I waited 8 years of training, 4 years of bodybuilding specific training before I hopped on that stage, just to make sure, hey, I wasn't that guy. But I think honestly, that's probably it's just not trendy right now, and that's just the best way to put it. And part of it, I wouldn't say it freaks me out, but it makes me wonder how long is it going to take before we get back to it? Because there was a point in time where geared powerlifting was so big that raw powerlifting was just not. It was done. Like, we were goofballs for showing up at a meet without a squat suit. And there was like two of us, and there was 50 of them. So, I think when I look at that story, at some point it's going to come back. It's going to be one of those things where I think it's going to be just this generation of athletes in other divisions that kind of how they decided at a certain point in their gym adventures that, I think I need to chase something, whether it be powerlifting, a men's physique show, but I need something different. I think at a certain point, that division's just not going to be very satisfying, especially on the natural side of things, because you want to see yourself progress. You want to see yourself get bigger. You want to see yourself get leaner this time around. So that's something that I do see at some point making a comeback. But I don't ever see it getting as big as raw, drug-tested powerlifting, which I don't think I would have said a few years back.
Yeah, I think the inclusivity or the attempt to make it more inclusive is part of what's killing it. I don't...
I could agree with that in some ways too.
It makes everyone think that they could or should be in the top half very early in their careers, right?
Or that they shouldn't wait. They shouldn't wait. Yeah.
And it sets, like, if I can win a bikini show, like, why train harder for 8 years to be good at figure or bodybuilding? It, like you said, with men's physique too. And I think we've had this talk a lot, and you always make fun of me. I think it all boils down to, like, I don't think everyone should think they should win. That's just a terrible way to look at sport, in my opinion.
Yeah. There's very few winners, in fact. Right?
Yeah, but it's like, if you don't do stuff unless you're going to win, then, I don't know. Never mind. Oh, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole, but that's my opinion is, like,
good point.
It is there, it's not like people don't do basketball because they might not win. Like, I don't know. That's what makes a sport, is that you don't win everything. So it, when they breed a division for everybody, and it's like, I don't know, when you have 8 divisions, so 8 people win, but each division has 3 people, so only 16 people are losers. Like, that's crazy to me. And so when you are a loser, you feel like an even bigger piece of shit because there were 8 other winners out of 24 people. And it's like, I know that what you guys are talking about 10 years ago, where, there'd be 1 winner for every 20 people. Like, that to me is how the sport started, right? I don't know. Same thing happened to competitive cheerleading. I know nobody listening to this probably cares about that, but it happened in competitive cheer too. Like, when I was in high school versus now, it was like you have varsity and JV, and now there's like, and if you were to compete at a varsity level, there's like varsity co-ed, varsity small, varsity large, varsity like 20 and plus. Or, you know what I mean? So like they just they like chopped it into a bajillion things too, and it's like, the goal of sport isn't to just see how many trophies you can give away. And so again, I think
that's a great point.
Yeah, the attempt to include everybody and making winning so regular, in my opinion, makes it so scary to lose when there are so many winners. When you know what I mean? So you expect, like, it's at some point, right? If there's only 20-something people in a show or whatever, 2-3 people per thing, it's like at some point, if half of the people that show up are winners, like, when you're a loser, you feel even shittier than when there was a lot of losers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess. See, this is it's a hard topic because I don't want a lot of people who are tuning in who do other divisions. It's like they don't like us. It's not necessarily that. It's not that at all. And Go for it, Andrea.
No, you're right. I don't want people to think that either. It's and again, with us as a coaching team, it's like whatever comes our way, whatever gets added, if there's 3 other in between physiques, like we're always going to coach it. And we're always, because we know that what we do works, right? And our methods work. And if they do a bikini light and a physique medium or whatever they want to do, like we're always going to support people that want to do any of those divisions. It's just because of these extra divisions, like the whole point of this podcast is it's killing the more difficult ones. And I don't know, maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe people that have the personality that want to go all the way to bodybuilding like only having a few others at the top tiers to compete against. Like maybe there are people like that. Like how Jeff said, and you too, Bert, you and Jeff are always like, I want to compete at the hardest show. I want to compete against the best physiques at the end of the season because I want to know how I stack up. Yeah, y'all are a dying breed.
But see, the issue is that I do feel that there's a lot of athletes that might have ended up being bodybuilders that are competing in other sports. So, for example, I don't even know the young man's name. Like Russ Wohl is his Instagram name.
Yeah, Russ. Yeah, he has a great physique.
Like great physique, and I'm like, dude, you'd be a very like good lightweight to early middleweight bodybuilder. Like you would be tremendous. Yeah, and he trained, and he's a bodybuilder to me. Like this dude eats his protein, curls, and then does the powerlifting. But so that's probably where I have the beef. It's like, man, a lot of these guys aren't giving it a go. They might get a lot of satisfaction from that. Bodybuilding, I think that's probably, if there was a selling point, I feel, is it the adventures in bodybuilding. Or even like figure, because the thing is, figure at the end was getting to the point where it's like it's just bodybuilders that are posing differently. There's just certain, and this goes outside of winning. I go back to bodybuilding, yes, to win. To the spirit of competition is going to bring out the best in me in regards to my physique, and I enjoy supplementing my own will with that. But the other thing is all that you get from a mental standpoint to like grind that long. To I guess really make this a priority and go through everything you have to get there and look right. I think a lot of people, for them, that's what discourages them. But to me, that's probably one of the best reasons, one of the main reasons you should bodybuild is because you're going to get, like most people who played football never made it to the NFL. However, they're maybe kicking ass in some other line of work because of the lessons they learned through sport. And talk about a sport that teaches you, like I've been through football double days. I've had some really
No, I think the way you feel about bodybuilding, I know, but the way you feel about bodybuilding is the way I felt about gymnastics, and is the way I'm sure Russ feels about powerlifting, and the way that I feel about grid right now. So I think everything you learn from bodybuilding, while there's some parts that are unique to bodybuilding, just like there's something like grinding is unique to powerlifting, whatever. But the life lessons, if you give any sport everything you have, you get similar life lessons.
But see, bodybuilding has got that one component. Like I can work my butt off for 10 hours. But I am wired, and here's the thing: I have a super favorable physiology for this sport. Like getting cold, a lot of the stuff that other people get, I don't know what you're talking about. I know because of my athletes, but still, like it sucks and it hurts so bad, and you get alligator arms so frequently throughout, like during the process. Like you want to wimp out, you want to eat, you want to do all these things that are not conducive to you. Want to skip the frontal lobes of your brain and go directly for like the stuff that brings you pleasure. And there's no sport that like makes you work that way, I feel. Because a lot of people can work hard, but like take away their food, tell them to like perform on 8 calories per pound. That's different.
It is different. But again, every sport has its different. I mean, like MMA, wrestlers, weight class sports, sometimes a lot of I mean, yeah. So I think,
I guess I'm coming from the perspective that I've had people who've done those other sports. They've done collegiate wrestling and they've gone really far with that. And they're like, there's absolutely nothing that compares to this. And
It's
they've done
cool.
it at a super, super high level. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's above and beyond other sports. I'm just saying that if you're going to do physique sports, like,
Oh, okay. Yeah. I agree. Don't halfway
yeah,
do them. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, yeah, it's like, do you want to play basketball in a hoop this big that's like brought down a few feet?
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, and that's the other thing too is that I mean, one of the things that made me kind of form my opinion is that it's just not exciting. It's not exciting, and at one point for me it was exciting. I don't know why. It was kind of exciting, kind of looking up there and trying to predict who was going to be the winner and who had the prettiest physique and et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know. It's you're like you said, Bert. It is a lot of hard work. I mean, I've had acquaintances that went through Navy SEAL training who would much rather do that than go through a bodybuilding prep. And then, of course, and this has happened on more than one occasion. You go through all of that, you get up on stage, and I've had so many people say, what, even if I would have won, it still wouldn't have been worth it. I'm not going to do it again. And so part of it's like, what I understand, maybe it's a cyclical thing, just like powerlifting was. Powerlifting was dead when they started doing single ply and two ply and four ply and pretty soon it looked like an exoskeleton, and now it's kind of come back around, and I realize that probably it's going to be the same thing for bodybuilding. But it's like what can happen to make it just more exciting, and you guys kind of touched on it a little bit in a prior podcast, but I just feel like something needs to be done to where it's outside of Insta fame,
Yeah. Well, I mean, is that part of this conversation? Like, what are things that, should we talk about that? Like things that we think could help? But I mean, is it even our duty? Like, I don't,
I don't know. But it would be nice. I think that would help it, as far as rejuvenating some excitement, into the sport. And, yeah, but that was just kind of one of the things that kind of popped into my mind. It's like, because one of the big things that I remember, it was like, what, I want to get in that magazine, this one right here. I remember that so vividly. It was like, I want to get in that magazine, that was kind of one of my big goals. And it just seems like now all we've got to showcase all of our hard work is Instagram, and sometimes that's negative.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you're right, Andrea. Is it our place to do that? I don't know,
Well,
but,
I mean, or is it even a reflection of the way society as a whole, the barrier to entry for everything is lower, right? Everyone's an entrepreneur now because they made, I don't know, a $5 thing online. Like, I don't know, so everyone's a physique athlete now because they got the leggings and the curls. Like, I don't know, like maybe it's not the sport is dying. It's just anything that used to seem exclusive is now just far more available to everybody because of the rise of the internet. You can get educated anywhere. You don't have to live by your coaches. You can just slap public figure on your Instagram and you are one, shit like that. So
yeah, or letter pro.
yeah. So maybe it's not bodybuilding's dying. It's just that anything that used to be exclusive doesn't have to be anymore. I don't know.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Because it was like this little cult thing back in the day. Like, you couldn't talk.
Yeah.
Because it used to be, I'm sure, like, you talk about other bodybuilding. Now, when I say, like, bodybuilding.com, everyone knows that that's, like, the website that everyone in America goes to buy their supplements. Like, they don't think of it as actually bodybuilding the sport. It's just where you can get a few fitness articles and buy your subs. Like, it's not...
And it used to not be that. It was absolutely...
The sport?
When I go back, it was all about, like, these... When I went there, it was teambodybuilding.com was, like, the sub-site.
Okay.
And these kids, like I remember they would write articles and they would like use pictures of like Lee Priest, and like that was the end goal, was like to look mutated. It's just so different from now. Yeah, bodybuilding.com is something to everyone, it seems like.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Maybe the same number. Yeah, but maybe the same number of people. Like maybe it is the same number of people that get on stage per year in the bodybuilding divisions. It's just there's so many damn shows now. Because 2013 Mayhem, there was over 100 competitors. I mean, there was. Remember that the men's novice bodybuilding went from end of stage to end of stage. There was like 20 something people in it or something.
Yeah. And that was one. Yeah, that was one class.
One class,
there was 3 of them.
Right? And we can't. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that was the year that Matt Ogus and Chris Lovato competed, and they were at the prime of their little joint venture, right? And so, I mean, that's the biggest bodybuilding show I've ever attended, natural, right? And I mean, it's hard to say like how much of that was really Matt and Chris bringing it all, how much of that was the rise of YouTube, and at the time they were a big deal. 3D was at its height of YouTubing. There's like people from all over the damn world there.
the other divisions were fairly new, so they were, you didn't want to sign up for something that was not so certain. You didn't know what you were getting into.
I think that was also the first year of Fit Body, though, that WNBF did like the heels, female physique.
Yeah.
So, and I'm trying to think, like, how did it all fall? Like, is that maybe it, that there's no, we don't think about this, maybe there's no famous natty bodybuilders right now besides you, Bert. I'm just kidding. but you know what I mean? When you think about it, now, everyone who's a famous YouTuber probably has competed once or twice, but usually not in real full-on bodybuilding. Some yes, but usually it's male physique, female bikini. I'm trying to think of the really famous people, or they might not be competing. They're just spokesmodels for certain supplement companies.
Yeah.
Maybe that's missing. I don't know.
Because I mean, there was a post that Bert just put up on his Instagram here recently of a bodybuilder that I had never heard of. I had never heard of him before, and I was just looking at him going, "Why have I not heard of this guy?" And I mean, we're certainly not going to come up with the solution here in our little talk, but I think that it needs to be brought up so that the great minds that are out there and the masses can do something, and maybe it will be just dumb luck, but boy, it sure would be nice to not just leave it to that, But yeah, maybe I don't know. It would sure be nice to be able to know about people like that, though.
See, bodybuilding, I don't think it's, I guess, like going back to the original question, I don't feel like it's dead, because I think it's better than ever. Like, there's many things you can do within.
I think it's just perceived.
Mm-hmm. Now, are we
even
talking
if it,
lifestyle,
it's just,
or are we
but
talking...
the lifestyle, lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because it's cool to do. Like, I have homies from high school that I see on the Instagram taking a picture in a gym mirror with a protein shake, and I'm like, you used to laugh at me about this, dude.
Exactly. Yeah. I would totally agree with you. I would totally agree. The lifestyle now, it seems like everybody.
But that's not the sport.
Some sort.
That's not
the
lifestyle.
Sport. You're correct.
That's the lifestyle.
You're right.
But it's influence, and it comes like you can trace back the fossils to like the original like bodybuilding, and I feel that will come back at a certain point. It's just like. We're dipping down a little bit. No one wants to do this weird sport that takes up so much energy and time. So I think it's going to come back up like raw powerlifting did at some point. At a certain point, those guys were like, this is kind of silly. We're not even really lifting the weight, and it's a totally different sport from what it was intended to be. I actually want to know how strong I am, and I want to progress from there. And I think it came back via that way. And I think eventually a lot of these athletes, might be 5 years from now, might be 10, it'll get to the point where they're like, I'm kind of like capped at looking the same, and I have these really awesome quads that I've been developing year after year, and I feel like I can get them leaner. Let me jump in this direction, and then they pervert everyone else. So Because the truth is, almost every physique competitor, especially on the male side, they kind of want to do bodybuilding to a certain extent. They're like,
But
they
they all
wish
think
they
they
could.
can't.
They just don't. Exactly.
Yeah.
So they just might need more
Yeah.
time. And again, because the sport, the way it's laid out now, it lets you jump on that stage a few years too early, perhaps.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe we just need some time, and it'll come back, and I won't be that
Yeah.
weird guy that plays the accordion and very
Well,
troubling instrument, but no one likes it.
it's very similar to my hope that like the real big CrossFit craze right now will feed our Olympic lifters,
It is.
in the next Olympics, because I remember watching the Olympics, I'm going, gosh, why isn't there more competitive American, Olympic lifters from the United States? It seems like, CrossFit, the way it is right now, that we should have somebody that's competitive, like in every weight class.
Yeah.
It just was, maybe the timing was not right. It's going to be the next Olympics when, the CrossFit craze is fed it. And we
It's
have a lot
funny.
of really good
It's
athletes.
like bodybuilding and powerlifting. Like, there's a lot of really good CrossFitters that are now going into strictly Olympic weightlifting now. Half the women's national team were CrossFitters. So I think it's funny how that's shifting too. Well, and I think too, right? It's like a lot of athletes have evolution through sports, right? Like if you're an athlete, you're an athlete. Like personally, I've gone through, recreationally, probably 10 sports, but like very seriously, like 4 different sports in my life. Like every 5 to 10 years, there was gymnastics and then cheer and then bodybuilding. And I guess a year and a half there, powerlifting. And now I'm doing this grid thing, that's the thing, right? Trying, not even there yet, but it's, and I think what Lawrence might've been talking about is like, okay, I did this thing and now I'm onto this thing. And that's pretty common, right? But in the same, we just talked about that CrossFitters kind of are like, okay, I'm tired of doing 2 workouts a day for like 4 hours. Now I'm going to do Olympic lifting and be, less tired all the time. And it's a couple of things that I've heard on like the Instagram profiles of people I used to follow who are CrossFitters that now they're like, oh my God, I can sleep better. I have more time and I can do really good at this Olympic weightlifting thing. Right. And so like Bert said, maybe it is just a transition. Like maybe there's a lot of 15-year-olds right now that we're helping somehow. I don't know, or maybe that'll be the next wave. But I think it's just that natty bodybuilding was a big deal 4 or 5 years ago, and all those people are on their downslope from it or in their extended off season from it. And so how do we get a new wave of people in?
Yeah, and like Bert said, maybe it is just a cyclical thing, which I hope it is. But I don't want it to become that,
well,
because
what go ahead, Brad. Sorry, damn it. I hate when I do that.
Well, no, that's fine. I was just going to say, there was a point when I loved it, and my whole thinking was, wow, a pro card, wouldn't that be cool to have? I wonder how many years I'll have to put in before I can get a pro card, and I just remember how hard I worked and how much that developed me as a person. And I don't want that same feeling to go away for others like my son,
Yeah. I wonder too if it's like, all right, if we talk about when is at the height of it, right? There was a lot of, we said Matt, Chris, 3DMJ. I was like one of the couple girls, right? There was like a whole YouTube community of people who were currently competing, about to compete, just competed. Like it was this, 10, 20 of the top YouTube channels in fitness were people competing in natural bodybuilding and figure, right? And we were in the early 20s, and that's exactly where all the people who were in their prime to get ready to compete in something were, like young adults, right? And that's where everybody consumed information, and that's where we were all going. And I think maybe now, right, all these teenagers, early 20s, are on Instagram. And on Instagram right now, bodybuilding as a sport isn't represented. It's the fitness lifestyle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's why everyone feels like the bikini and male physique is the way to go, because that's what all those fitness, the people with the clothing lines and the, that stuff. So the big YouTubers right now actually aren't bodybuilding competitors. They might have done a bikini show, they might have done a figure show, but they primarily are in marketing different products and keeping their following based on that stuff. So maybe we're just misrepresented amongst the youth, right? Because now we're podcasting, right? We grew up. And let's be for real, 19, 20-year-olds are probably still watching YouTube, not listening to podcasts. So maybe that's another thing to consider, or a thing feeding it. I don't know.
Absolutely, because people want to belong to something, and media, that's what it does. It makes you want to, buy that car, smoke those cigarettes, do the men's physique, that sort of stuff. Don't smoke cigarettes. That's a bad habit.
No. I get what you're saying, though. Like, it's, and so maybe...
part of the community.
Maybe it is like the youth, right? And I think, like I said, like we grew up, like I don't watch YouTube anymore. Like just for funsies, right? And I know that we all did 10 years ago. And so I think maybe this podcast, it's grown so much, but I think it is amongst the people our age that are listening to podcasts, 25 to 45 maybe, that might at this point feel like they're past their prime and it's too late to do bodybuilding. Whereas when we were servicing a group of our peers in our early 20s, they still felt like, I can still do this thing. And they like did it with us or right after us. Whereas like now maybe the people listening to this already have been competitors, they are coaches, but they're not like a kid with stars in their eyes about bodybuilding. You know? I wouldn't think, I don't know.
I think, like you said, it seems so watered down. It seems like everybody's got a pro card. It seems like everybody's got a pro card in something. And it kind of reminds me of the powerlifting records where, you could just about set a powerlifting record in just about anything. It was like there was Submaster, there was 35 to 39, there was 41 to 42, there was 43 to 47, And that was one of the big allures, for me, is that I need to keep working my way up, Okay. And so it kind of, sometimes I wish that there were no bikini pros and there were no classic physique pros and I wish there was just bodybuilding pros. And so you could kind of work your way up, Sure, I mean, that bikini, it's a great way to get into cosmetic sports and physique sports. Physique, yeah, it's great. But maybe you can kind of work your way up to where it was like, you win a physique show, now you bump up to classic physique. Right?
Okay.
Maybe you go through classic physique, and then now, boom, you can go into bodybuilding, Because, there's people now that I know that are great physiques, and they're going backwards. They're going from bodybuilding to classic physique, and they're going from bodybuilding to physique. And it's like, oh, man, this is so backwards compared to the fun sports that are out there and the fun sport that I used to do,
Yeah. It's hard to have this conversation without our opinions in there.
Go ahead. I thought you were thinking about the feds and them tuning in, because I guess when Brad says that, I know what fed he's talking about in powerlifting that had all those divisions. Like, what happens at 32 that I can set a record now at 32? Like, you should be closing in on your best. You should be really good at 32. I feel, as a powerlifter, right? The issue with bodybuilding, it's the most objective division by far, which is kind of crazy to say in that sport because it's still not perfect. Sure. But one thing the USAPL has done is they have stepped in and they have totally standardized everything to the point where it's like, no, like your homie can't be one of the judges on the side that's like judging your squat, and if it's high, you're gonna get a red light. Hilarious. My girlfriend Leanna, she's actually red lighted Ray Williams twice, and she's like, I had to. That's just what you do in the USAPL. It was Ray, and I didn't want to, but he was squatting high. So, I think with bodybuilding, we need to bring some of that on, and I think that's going to bring people in because they're going to know what they're aiming for. It's going to be very cutthroaty. Some people might not be happy with that. Like, some people aren't happy with the fact that the USAPL makes you go that deep when you squat. Like they're very displeased with that, right? Yeah. His elbow doesn't lock out. Well, then maybe he shouldn't be bench pressing, right? Like, that's like a lot of, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I think that would go a long way to just look at the body, specifically that division, really standardize things. I think that's kind of what the NPC is trying to do, but they're just creating more divisions. Like, okay, we got this idea for this classic physique. There's weight caps. There's a 212 division in the IFBB. Like, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get people to, okay, this is how you bodybuild within these guidelines, and this is how we're going to get the best results, the best product. This is how the sport is played. I think we need to revisit that when it comes to natural bodybuilding, make it just super, super clear what it is that the criteria is and how to get there. And I think that's just going to attract people on their own versus, going for these other ones where like it's hard to make my homie came by. It's hard to make. He must be competing in another division. Didn't like that. Wanted to censor me. Sorry, motorcycle man. But yeah, no, I feel that would go a long way, and it would just make people appreciate bodybuilding. Because one of the things that I find so comforting is that I'm allowed to push as hard as I can.
He's upset.
There he goes. He's so mad. But yeah, I know what I'm aiming for, and there's no caps, at least naturally, in regards to like how I just push until I'm done with the sport, basically.
I don't know if that is have you heard a lot of people say the reason they don't want to do bodybuilding is because it's a subjective sport?
No, but I think that's how you catch it on the way up, I feel. Because I do feel that the stock's down now. This is when you buy, and then eventually it's what powerlifting did, but it needs to be a better version of its former self, for sure, in regards to how the feds market it, how the sport is structured. Like, I'm a big fan of the scoreboard. I think if we had a scoreboard up there, like during the division, like you kind of know where you're at, and you can't help but look. Like your coach might tell you, like, dude, don't look, but I'd be like, okay, how did I do during the symmetry round? Fuck, I'm in place. You know.
And it would make it more of a sport too, because if there's clear, like we know that there's kind of criteria. Okay, we need to make you look like an X up there. We need to get that symmetry looking like that. So we need to do things to make your physique look as close to that as possible. Positioning of the hips and bringing the shoulders, around, and et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't seem like even those criteria are adhered to, enough. It's kind of like you mentioned, Bert. Homie can't be your buddy, the side judge. I kind of feel like we need to have totally impartial, judges that know the criteria. The competitors know the criteria, and they stick to that, and try to make it less subjective. But you're absolutely right. Bodybuilding is crazy as that sounds, is the most objective of all of them.
I think it's just too hard. When it all comes down to it, I think people. I'm not talking.
Yeah,
anyone who listens to this, I'm not talking shit. I think just in general, people don't like doing hard things, and now that there's so many easier things, it goes the same way with. Like I can think of a lot of people that have tried Olympic lifting in the past year of their lives and quit on it after 3 weeks because I don't think they realized how hard it was. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah.
There's nothing we can really do about that.
Right, but you know what I mean?
It's very hard. Yeah.
It's like people will try something and if it's not coming to them within a month or two, it's too much, right? But now with, again, like bikini or male physique, it can come to them within less than a year. They can get on stage, so then like, cool, right? But when someone hasn't really, they just started going to the gym and they look at Jeff and Berto and they're like, there's no way. But they look at maybe a novice or someone with abs on Instagram, they're like, maybe, But I think that it's just, in general, I just don't think people want to do things that are really, really, really fucking hard. And now and I think everyone knows bodybuilding is hard, but now that with the way that there are so many other divisions they can do, they're quicker to do that than just not bodybuild at all, like you said, Bert, just not weight. But I think the whole damn conversation is like on an individual basis, not globally, and not blaming the internet or organizations. It's just like there aren't a lot of people in this world that like doing really hard things. And if you don't make them wait, they probably won't.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. No. My answer came more from like I guess like this is the reform that needs to take place. Whereas like yours is that's just how it is. I feel.
Yeah.
Personally, and I think it's gonna always be that way because it's always been that way. Like if you don't have to work as hard for a similar result.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny because when you talk about that, it just made me think of something that, maybe there's just like, people are almost too smart in a way. There's like too much information out there. Because I will admit, when I first started bodybuilding, I was like, there's no reason why I can't look like Skip LaCour. No reason. I just got to work hard enough.
Yeah.
And I just got to wait enough time. I got to put in enough years. There's no reason why I can't look like, Skip LaCour. Mm-hmm. And even like in 2006, when I first met Jeff, I was like, wow, that dude is lights out freaking a bodybuilder. There's no reason why I can't look like that. Unbeknownst to me, of course, I didn't know about, structure and symmetry and, all this kind of stuff that plays into it that, I didn't know about at the time. But now it's like, I know that and everybody knows that. You know what I mean? And it's not just that, it doesn't matter how hard I work. I just know that I'm not going to look like Skip LaCour.
But But when you think about yourself now versus then, you are a different physique entirely. You have so much more muscle. You've been able to get lean as all get out. Like, it's not like you didn't make any progress. You made huge, huge, huge amounts of progress. Of course, you didn't change your bone structure, but it's again, if it's weird to me, if I'm being really honest, it's weird to me. It's weird for me to hear you say that you don't want to do it if you can't win.
Well, and I mean, I wouldn't say win, but I just want to be competitive, I just want to be one of the guys up there that is like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's not that I want to win, and I don't really to be honest, I don't really even care to win. I just want to be competitive. I just want to be competitive. I just feel like it's not going to happen. I'm going to be a lapper. I'm going to be one of those guys that, hey, thank you, Mr. Loomis. You go over there. Let's skip the main guys here.
But Brad, here's the thing. You're always, we kind of all agreed on this. Like, bodybuilder is someone who doesn't just compete as a bodybuilder, but they do all these other things, right? I guess if there was no powerlifting, you might still be bodybuilding. Yeah. Because that would probably be, because I feel the same way with powerlifting. Like, to me, it's like, dude, I'd have to crush myself for 2 years to get to a place where I'd be like noticeable, And then, like, when I think about it, it's kind of like your bodybuilding. It would actually still be pretty good. But then I have this other sport over here where it's like, oh, if I show up, I matter, and so I'm going to focus on this because of that part. It's a little bit more important to me than I guess I perhaps lead people to think I want to win, but at the same time, I guess.
You don't think you just didn't love powerlifting as much as you love bodybuilding?
No, I
it's a chicken or egg. Like, you love it because you're good at it, but you also might be good at it because that's what you started at and you've always loved it.
Perhaps, but I guess if I didn't have bodybuilding, for example, that was outlawed, right? Like, hey, you guys with your thongs, stop it. The feds coming to shut down bodybuilding shows. It's no longer allowed, right? I think I would powerlift because I need some sort of vehicle with motivation that comes from the competitive side of things. I think that's I yearn for that. And that sport, maybe I'd be 28th at USAPL Nationals, but it's like, you know what? Next year we're going to break into those teams, and I would just be working at that, and I'd want to maximize myself. And I think that's the part about bodybuilding, the division that I feel gets overlooked is you get to maximize yourself. Like, here's your chance. Go as hard as you want, because chances are it's never going to be enough. And I love that part of it. And I think that's what people who might wanna, the first year of training, like, I'm gonna do a show, they short themselves when it comes to that experience because it's too hard.
Yeah, I still think it's all individual. Like, we're all talking in, because I did that shit. I competed really early, and I just loved it more, to be honest. I just got pissed. I don't know. Like, I got obsessed and pissed. I was like, I can do this again. I'll do it better. Just wait, you know?
Yeah. But we all like shit here that's challenging. That's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
We love to be challenged and pushed and discover new things about yourself along the way that it's like, man, that was dope. And I'm glad I did that, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if we even... What did we do with this podcast?
Hey, where did the bodybuilders go? They're still there.
Dude, that's the thing. I think they're just not as famous as they used to be unless they're the freaks on the IFBB stage, which we know aren't natty, so everyone just looks at them and is like, well, because I don't want to take steroids, that's not happening, so, like, fuck it.
Yeah. Yeah. They're still there, or at least people with the right mindset for it. And I think if you're tuning in, and like a lot of what intrigues us about our sports, like you're like sitting there and you're like, hey, that's me. Perhaps you should give bodybuilding a try.
Yeah. And I think too, we preach like waiting so it can be good, so that you can do it. But I just, only if that's the only thing about it that would make you happy, right? Because if you do compete early and you do make an ass of yourself, whatever, you know, like you just do it again in a couple of years. Like, I think that it's all just a perception thing, right? Yes, on show day, and yes, in the middle of every prep, it feels like it's the biggest fucking deal ever, right? But like you have to like carry within your brain the two sides of the coin. Like you have to be good at it. You have to feel like this is so important and every part matters, and I want to do my best. But at the same time, there has to be another part of your brain that you can employ when you need to that says like, who fucking cares? Like, I'm gonna do it again. It's not a big deal. It's not the end of me. I'll just keep going, right? And I think that's the difference, right? Is in you see it in kids too, right? Brad, you coach. Like, there's a kid that loses, and they're like, damn it, that sucked. Let's do it again next week. And then you have a kid that loses and is crushed and wants to quit and doesn't want to go back to practice. Like, it's the same thing with adults, right? We are who we are. And so that's my favorite thing about the sport, is all the shit we've said, is that it is so unique, and it does only take so few people that can do it. Like, I love that it is a small percentage. Right? Of course, you don't want it to die to the point that there's no more competitions, right? But you also, and as upset as we get when we see a show that has like 5 bodybuilders and 100 of every other division, but at the same time, that's why it's so cool, is because so few people can do it. And it's not physically, right? Because I had that argument at the beginning of the podcast where I'm like, if you just take a lot of years and a lot of effort, it might work out for you. But it is cool that not everybody has the mentality to do that for years on end.
See, I love that. I've never looked at it from that angle. I think I've always looked at it from the pessimistic angle. Like, wow, there's very few bodybuilders. This is not a good time. But that's probably how I'm going to do it now. When I see it's like the few, the proud, like there's only
we're
so
like
many
the
of us to
Marines
do
and
it.
shit, dude.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Like, I like that it's our own little thing. I just don't want it to die all the way, but I don't know if it even really is, like I said, because it might just be so spread.
Well, and maybe it's just a result of the popularity that it was at, you know, at 2010, 2011, you know, when there was, when there was like 20 pros on the stage and there was like 21 in the novice middleweight class, you know, that we need to make more shows. We need to make more shows so that more people will do this. And so now we've kind of seen the swing the other way, where we've got too many shows and not enough people showing up, you know. So it could be just a result of those types of cyclical things that we were referring to here. And
because the cool part is, like, even if you took a bunch of shows away, the people that love it enough and that like will go to the shows anyways. You know, like, if and when I decide to compete in whatever, like, then I do it. It's the same thing when people are like, you know, how much is the show, or how expensive is a suit or whatever. I'm like, I don't. Whatever it is, I'm going to fucking figure it out because I decided I want to do this thing, you know? my first season I was broke as a joke in grad school, but it was like, I'll figure it out, like if you, it is the few and the proud, right? It's like, if you love it enough, it's going to happen. You don't need a show in your area. If you've decided you want to do this thing, you'll travel for it. It's just the way it always is. If you don't know how you're going to do it financially, you'll figure it out. Like, and that's what's super cool about it. So I don't know. There's always going to be people that love it to the point of it doesn't fucking matter how many shows there are, which is good. That means promoters could cut a lot and they'd make more money per show. And
I just looked at the first worlds. Had how many? 34 bodybuilders in all. So, 34 pro bodybuilders, which is like about the same as today. So I guess like that's the one thing with the pro division, and that's how I took my pro card. It was kind of a way for me to sift myself. No offense to anyone, but I didn't want to be up on stage with that guy that lost 50 pounds and it's a transformation contest and didn't really quite get the memo about what this is about. It was like my chance to be up there with like the select few that it's like they really do this. And yeah, I think that's I found your words very comforting, Andrea, because I do wonder about that myself. I'm like, I'm gonna be that one dude that's like still bodybuilding, and it's like, it's like that guy that's still wearing Eddie Bauer nowadays. It's like, come on, bro, like that's yeah.
There's someone at home or on the way to work in their Eddie Bauer shoes that's pissed right now.
I'm stuck in 1998.
Or no, Ed Hardy, that one too.
Yeah.
Okay. So we didn't answer any. Is bodybuilding dead? I say no. But I think you're right. It's the contrast thing, Brad. I think just everything else got so big. All the fitness lifestyle shit got so big that I think it seems that way. And there's so many shows that they just spread them all. But I don't think it's dead. Because we have full rosters all the time still.
Yeah. They might not be bodybuilders, but yeah.
We have athletes. We have rosters. We have clients. So people obviously still want to do this. Our Skype list is outrageous. People obviously, and they're getting better at it. They're getting smarter at it because they're contacting us sooner and in the off season. It's still there.
Well, and maybe it's just evolving. Maybe it's just evolving into something different. So, that's always a possibility as well. And that's the thing about evolution is we don't know where it's going.
Yeah. Cool. Are we done? I think we did good. Job. Closing words?
Yeah.
Closing words.
No, I got to go bodybuild.
Okay. Have a good workout, Bart. We'll see y'all later.
Hey, everybody. It's Eric Helms. Thanks for tuning into our podcast. As you know, at 3DMJ, we promote evidence-based approaches to the lifting community. If that's something you want to dive deeper into, I'd encourage you to check out my research review, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport, or for short, MASS. This is a review that myself, Dr. Mike Zerdos, and Greg Knuckles put out every month. We cover the latest research publications that are applicable to strength and physique athletes, or anyone who's looking to get stronger or improve their body comp. Our content is in both written and video format. For more information on how to subscribe, check out 3dmusclejourney.com/mass. That's 3dmusclejourney.com/MASS for further details. Thanks for tuning in.